Due to the extremely ambiguous writing of Pathologic 2, it has caused a lot of debate amongst fans as to which ending is the better ending. A lot of people argue for the Diurnal Ending and make a lot of good points, but today I make this video to confirm that the Diurnal Ending is definitely, without a doubt, the worst ending out of the two. Of course, I will provide evidence for my claim, but before we get started, I have a few disclaimers. The plot summary I will be providing kind of assumes you know how to fill in the gaps. So if you're completely new to Pathologic lore, I recommend watching another YouTuber's plot summary and then coming back to this video. I must confess that I did not watch all the Pathologic 2 theory videos, so if my own video overlaps with somebody else's, hopefully it serves more as a reinforcement than me copying them, because it is not my intention to copy them. Let's get started. We play as Artemi Burak, a doctor who's moved away from his hometown to study in the big city. However, he receives a distress letter from his father summoning him back to his hometown. Artemi travels back home by train, accompanied by a guy called Fellow Traveler. This Fellow Traveler is clearly not human and is much more powerful than he lets on. He breaks the fourth wall constantly, and you could call him a meta character if you want to be fancy with it. He's an interesting character, but not very relevant to this video. When Artemi finally arrives home, he's immediately greeted by three people who seem convinced that he is the murderer they've been chasing. Artemi somehow fights them off and comes out on top. A child with the mask of a dog helps them out by providing a tourniquet to stop the bleeding. Artemi ventures further into town, but the people are in a frenzy because two people have been murdered the same day Artemi arrived, and he is naturally a suspect. So he seeks the help of his three old friends, Ruben, Lara, and Bad Grief. The first to help him is the latter. Artemi learns from Grief that one of the victims is Isidore Burak, Artemi's father, and the other is Simon Kane, which is the one the three were trying to avenge when they attacked Artemi. Bad Grief also informs him that not only do the townsfolk suspect him of patricide, even his own friend Ruben suspects him of patricide. Artemi is shocked, but decides to visit Ruben's apartment anyways, but all he finds is Daniel Dombrowski, aka the Bachelor, who is a playable character in the original Pathologic game. He's basically a fancy doctor from the capital. He tells Artemi he has managed to calm Ruben down and for some reason mispronounces Artemi's name. Either way, he's also not that important in this video. Artemi then visits Lara, who is also suspicious but decides to help clear his name anyways. While she does that, she suggests Artemi to sleep while he can. And he does. As soon as he falls asleep, he has a prophetic dream where he meets an executor who kind of makes fun of him. The executors are agents of the capital. You can think of them as the FBI, basically. Anyways, he mocks Artemi by implying that someone has tried this before and made the same mistake he is about to make. It's heavily implied that this someone is a previous Artemi. It's weird, but I will explain later. He wakes up from the dream and Lara managed to clear his name. However, she is worried about the footsteps upstairs. So Artemi goes to check on it and he meets Clara, aka the Changeling. She is also a playable character in the original Pathologic game. Anyways, she tells Artemi that the Buraks are destined to leave a trail of blood everywhere they go and basically starts beef with him. He informs Lara that she is basically harmless and moves on. As he wanders around the town, a mother complains about a tower called the Polyhedron. Artemi points out that this was not here before he left. Anyways, the mother says that the children have been acting too independent and that some stay in the tower to not return home, including her own children. And oddly enough, when anyone tries to speak against the tower, it's like their voice cord gets cut with a knife in that brief moment. The game informs us that a new pantomime, basically a fancy word for a play, is being rehearsed at the theater. Artemi visits the theater and finds Mark Immortel talking to another Artemi on stage. Okay, I will not dive too deep into this, but to explain simply, Mark Immortel is trying to solve death through his plays. He has tried numerous times but failed. However, this time he has decided to take a different approach. Instead of the stage being in the theater, he has set his stage as the real world itself. So he has sent out actors with acting instructions that will help him solve death. I was never that interested in his motives, but one thing that did interest me is this line from him when the Artemy on stage asks him about his own future. Ugh, I can't help but pity you. Look, there will be a happy ending. You'll even believe that you've won. No guilty conscience either, so relax, men of fate. Next. I am sure by now you can tell where I'm going with this video. This line can be interpreted as Mark talking directly to us as the player. Either way, Mark's line in combination to how the executor mocks Artemy's repeated mistake is really huge foreshadowing. Artemy is told that his father's burial will take place at the cemetery, so he makes way and upon arrival finds out that the earth is literally spitting him back out, making it impossible to bury him. Artemy must inherit his father's legacy in order for Isidore to be accepted by the earth. So he does. Inheriting this legacy means that Artemy now accepts this tribal part of his blood, the kin's heritage from his father. Isidore's legacy is not the only thing Artemy has inherited. He has also been left with a list of names containing 8 names. 7 of these names are names of children Isidore has deemed worthy to lead the town one day due to the special abilities that they all possess. They're all very interesting characters as well, but the details of who they are is not really important. The 8th name, Udurg, is a mystery to Artemy and nobody can give him a straight answer. For now, he goes searching the children in hopes that they might know something more about his father's death. The children do provide an insight but nothing conclusive. They do, however, all say that Simon and Isidore would gather them to pass down a piece of themselves to each one of them, which may sound weird, but I believe they meant a piece of them in the sense of their wisdom and spiritual connection to the town's mystical magic. On day 7, the Inquisitor Aglaia Lilich, I don't know, arrives in town, and the Inquisitors are basically the terminators of problem solving in the world of Pathologic. When there's an impossible problem to solve, that's when they are called in to make decisions that solve the impossible. They are able to do this due to supernatural intelligence, so they are almost all-knowing, but should they fail, their penalty is death. Because of this incredible weight of failure they carry, they are given extreme authority wherever they go, to the point where executing someone for cheating on their partner or stealing a peanut is okay. In the case of Aglaia though, she has been given an impossible of impossible tasks, which we'll come back to later. Either way, she tasks Artemy with prioritizing a serum over anything else. Artemy tries but he struggles, and on day 9, General Alexander Block arrives with an army and an order to arrest the Inquisitor Aglaia Lilich. However, this subplot is not very important for the purpose of my video, so I will skip over the details. Day 9 is also the day Artemy makes significant progress with the task Aglaia assigned him. He managed to track down Foreman Oyun, who helps him get in the abattoir where he found living blood. Living blood, it's basically the earth, also known as Mother Bodo's blood. The land itself is her body, which is why in the game's lore, it's absolutely forbidden to dig the ground. It's common knowledge not just among the kin or the tribal people, but the whole town. Mother Bodo is the female personification of the earth because the earth is actually alive and the kin treat the earth as their mother. So they call her Mother Bodo. Mother Bodo's blood is the key ingredient to the serum, but Artemy could only retrieve a few bottles during his time in the abattoir. But during his time in the abattoir, Artemy also finds the meaning of the name Udurg. It's referring to the heart of Mother Bodo. So in extension, Udurg is referring to her. One of the worm people tell Artemy that drinking this blood will make him feel alive. So he does, and upon consumption of the living blood, Artemy's consciousness is altered and is kind of able to be put in a state where he can communicate with his dead father. Through this conversation, Artemy finds out Foreman Oyun killed his father because Isidore was the one who unleashed the second ongoing plague that Artemy had to deal with. Isidore's ideology was that the town was put together wrong, and it must be ripped apart and put together again right. The way to rip it apart and trigger a reset was through the plague, which is why he unleashed the plague. And after this reset, the old ways of magic would finally die and allow the 7 children to inherit Earth's magic to make the town a better place. Foreman Oyun, upon hearing this, was convinced Isidore had gone mad and murdered him. Artemy can choose to either forgive or kill Foreman Oyun, but this choice is not really relevant to the theory, so I'm gonna skip over it. Anyways, Artemy figures out that the living blood is the key to the plague's cure. He informs Aglaia that he finally managed to make a serum, and she tells him to make more, but he says he does not know where to get more of this key ingredient. At this point in time though, I must reveal that there is another cure other than Artemy's serum, something the kids call Schmauder. It is basically a random mixture of pills. Nobody could figure out why this works. Not the fancy doctor from the capital, not Artemy. Nobody could explain. But a user on Reddit theorized that it's because it comes from the children in the polyhedron. The children at one point in the game tell Artemy that their thoughts come true inside the tower. Their dreams come true inside this tower, that they feel so powerful inside this tower. So this Redditor theorized that Schmauder works because the children from the tower believed it to work. So the polyhedron made it so. And this point is a really key point in this theory, so you have to remember this. However, this cure is never taken seriously by the adults, and Aglaia even ends up ordering the destruction of the polyhedron. The kin beg Artemy to not go through with the destruction, as the polyhedron and Mother Bodo live in cohesion. They need each other to live. By destroying the polyhedron, not only would Artemy be destroying the tower and the Earth, he would also be eradicating his own people, and they did not want to die. Skipping many details, the Diurnal Ending is triggered when Aglaia's orders are followed through. And this is how it goes. Artemy arrives where the polyhedron once was. The Earth, aka Mother Bodo, her blood is gushing out of the ground. Artemy drinks from it and the screen goes black. It's day 12, the final day. Artemy suddenly finds himself in a train with fellow Traveler. After a conversation with Traveler, Artemy is free to wander around and talk to anyone he wants at his leisure. And this is one of the many points used to say he is free, compared to the Nocturnal Ending where he is forcefully transported around town to interact with people. You cannot actually free roam in the Nocturnal Ending, and they use this point to say the Diurnal Ending is a good ending because Artemy is actually free, which is a fair point, to be honest, but I think it's just a simple trick because there is nothing else in the game that can prove that it actually represents freedom. And if I'm being a little bit nitpicky, he is also forcefully transported to the train anyways, you know, in both endings. So I think it's just a trick. Now moving on. In the Broken Heart, you can find Dombrowski, the Stamatin Bros, who are supposedly the creators of the polyhedron. But in my opinion, I think they were just used by the Canes because I don't think they're geniuses. But whatever. Yulia and Anna. Anna is sitting by herself on a separate couch, mumbling to herself, and with the exception of Yulia, they're all kind of moody, especially the Stamatin brothers, since they were supposedly, you know, like I said, the minds behind Polyhedron. It was their baby. Anyways, when Artemy tells them that he was the one responsible for the destruction of the Polyhedron, they just shrug it off and don't believe him. It's really odd because Yulia and Dombrowski are aware it was Artemy's decision. But yeah, whatever, let's move over. At Isidore's house, Artemy promises Sticky and Murky to raise them. Around the dormitory, Notkin says he wants to be a part of the kin, which is funny since his name is literally not kin. Anyways, Kaya is also there, preparing to be the future leader of the kin, making optimistic promises such as no one will be caged, history will be remembered, and she will have access to all sorts of candies, to which Mother Bodo seems to disagree with. A little too optimistic, you know, a little bit naive, you know. That's kind of what it feels like so far, doesn't it? So, it seems the kin were wrong about Mother Bodo's fatal wound, since Mother Bodo survived. The destruction of Polyhedron was never about the death of the kin, but rather adapting to the new ways of magic. Only those who are willing to adapt to the new ways will live. Like, that sounds like coping. You know what I mean? It does not make sense. Logically, it does not make sense. But okay, let's move on. However, Aspity and Clara claim they are dying because of Artemy's decision to destroy the turret. Clara specifically says that she will disappear along with the miracles of Earth. And one interesting fact is that in the original game, SPT was actually supposed to be the original changeling, but she failed. And I think the fact that they're both dying at the same time in similar fashion in Pathologic 2 tells me that she had the same role in Pathologic 2. She was also, yeah, whatever. So I thought it was interesting. Okay, now nearby the former mistress's graves, Capella and Khan announce they are going to one day marry and lead the town in the right direction. It's very obvious they don't love each other, but are doing it for the sake of the town. On the other hand, young Vlad wants to make Bull Enterprise progressive by banning child labor and have fair minimum wages, implying that a lot of the kins survived, you know. The Saburo family adopt Grace and teach her how to read, how to write. However, they forbid her from visiting Peter because she's grown very close to Peter because Peter took care of her when Artemy removed her from the cemetery for her own sake. Now, the Kanes plan to move to the other side of the river and Eva Jan is eager to join them. Finally, Artemy goes to the theater and can choose to remain as Artemy and go live out in the world, or remain as Artemy to stay in the theater or give up the mask and take the theater from Mark. One thing is for sure, he is not the original Haruspex or the real Artemy. Now, obviously in this case, choosing to live as Artemy would entail a somewhat happy ending, but let me tell you why it's the exact opposite. So, the Diurnal Ending is without a doubt 100% an illusion. It's a what could have been scenario that Artemy had to put himself under due to a terrifying realization that he had. Let me explain. So first of all, the living blood is a mind-altering substance as shown when Artemy quote-unquote talks to his dad. He didn't actually talk to his dad because if you read in between the lines and the dialogues, Isidore is not really talking and responding to Artemy. It's more like he's talking to himself or to somebody else, and Artemy is just listening and thinks they're communicating. So it puts his mind in a state where he could either reach his dad's spirit if he was actually communicating to him, or hallucinate a conversation with his dad. Either way, its effects are obviously incredibly powerful, and it's not a far-fetched to say that it can put Artemy in a state of mind where he is living in his ideal world. But, you know, it's a long shot to call this proof, so here's more proof. Remember Mark's line during the first pantomime? You'll even believe that you've won. This definitely feels like we've won, right? And combine this with the executor actually mocking Artemy's repeated mistakes, thinking he won. He's basically mocking us, you know, like the player. We think we won, but we didn't. That's why he's mocking us. The tone is intentional from the writers of Pathologic 2. You know, nothing is a coincidence. Yeah? So what else could these two be referring to except this particular ending where it looks and feels like we've won compared to the Nocturnal ending? Also, the bull you buy from the Steppy Man around the beginning of the game literally warns you to not kill the Earth by destroying the polyhedron. The kin themselves come to you and tell you not to kill the Earth, by extensions not to kill them by destroying the polyhedron. Yet you're telling me during the Diurnal Ending the Earth is well and alive. It's implied that Mother Bodo is alive during her talk about candy with Taya Taichik. You know, a lot of people try to spin it by saying it was never about the kin or the Earth themselves dying, but rather the death of the old ways. And that sounds like coping to me. That's like such a delusional thing to say, you know. If this is the theory you went with, you are role-playing Diurnal Artemy to perfection because you are also in the state of mind where you think you've won. You are under this illusion that you've made this right choice. No offense, of course. Here is my interpretation of the polyhedron and Mother Bodo and why she is definitely dead and there's no ways that she healed. The polyhedron, right, is an artifact powerful enough to cause the Earth itself a mortal wound. This initial wound caused Mother Bodo to release the plague as a defense mechanism because it was mortal. She felt like she was in danger. She had to do it. So the plague was released. But it's been quiet since, until Isidore decided to release the plague onto the town. So we know for sure that Mother Bodo was not responsible for this. It was not defense mechanism this time, right? It was Isidore. So she did not feel like she was going to die. She did not feel immediate threat of death, right? She did not feel like she needed to defend herself, is what I'm trying to say. And this point will come into contention later. We also find out during our time in the abattoir that Udorg is actually the living Earth, right? Basically, Mother Bodo is a bit confusing, but it's basically Mother Bodo, okay? But the moment Artemy received the list, Udorg is constantly in danger. And it's because Mother Bodo is slowly dying. As we can see in the abattoir, the tip of the polyhedron is almost reaching the heart. It's because she's slowly dying. Like, the polyhedron has been siphoning blood from her as well. And it's confirmed in the game that Mother Bodo is a living creature. We all know this. I keep repeating this point, but it's important. And just like any living creature, she has suffered a mortal wound. A wound, by the way, that has not been treated for 5 whopping years. 5 years. The only reason Mother Bodo is now alive is because that weapon that penetrated her has kept the wound closed. So this whole time she has been slowly bleeding out. And there is evidence of this because some characters in the game say they see a pool of blood by the polyhedron sometimes. And what else could it mean? She's slowly dying, she's slowly bleeding out. And also, Artemy can find living blood spilling out of the Uruk's ear on day 6. So there's evidence that she's slowly dying. And opening the wound at this point is basically confirming her death, since she has lost way too much blood at this point. By destroying the polyhedron, Artemy is doing exactly that. He's opening the wound and accelerating her death. Hence the bull and the kin warning Artemy not to destroy the polyhedron. And like I was saying earlier, like, she did not feel like she needed to defend herself immediately. Like, she did not feel the imminent death, right? It's because she was coexisting with the polyhedron. She knows that she's at a point where she needs the polyhedron to live now. That's why she's not releasing the plague. Yeah, that's why she's not releasing the plague. That's why she's not defending herself, because she knows she needs the polyhedron to live at this point. You know, it would have been different if they had destroyed the polyhedron like way sooner, when she still had blood, when she wasn't bled out. You know, it would have been different then. But at this point, it's too late. That's why she's not defending herself anymore. It's because she needs the polyhedron to live, right? And this is why the bull and the kin themselves keep on begging Artemy to not destroy the polyhedron. They know this, but Artemy is just like so tunnel visioned. You know, he thinks this is the right choice. It looks like it's the right choice, just like us. So what does this mean? Okay, so what does this actually mean? If the diurnal ending is just an illusion where Artemy is just in a dream state, what actually happened in the real world? Now, this part is pure speculation. You know, there's no evidence of this. There's nothing I can provide. This is pure speculation. Something terrible has happened, that's for sure. But this is my own speculation of what the terrible thing is. When the polyhedron was destroyed, right, the earth died, as shown by the blood like pouring out like an open wound would. There's no ways it survived, okay? This means both the miracle of man and the magic of earth is gone. Majority of the town was infected, and even though the plague cannot spread anymore, the infected remain infected. They will die if untreated, and that's exactly what happens, as it would be literally impossible for Artemy to produce hundreds, let alone thousands of serums in a single day. Not even 24 hours, by the way. So he has basically doomed them and accidentally caused genocide. But he realizes this, okay, because he also had some sort of spiritual connection to the town. Obviously he has some sort of ability as well, you know. He feels this. He realizes, oh no, I've done something terrible. I have doomed this town. I have caused genocide. I've made a terrible mistake. Just like the kin feared, they've perished. The earth died along with them. They perished. The 7 children may have survived, but what's the point? They're ordinary children now. The polyhedron is gone. The earth's magic is gone. They're ordinary children. They cannot lead the town anymore. They don't have those special abilities. So there's no mystical powers left to guide these children. Artemy literally has doomed the whole town with this decision. Now, even if we assume all the named characters survived, they now live in a ghost town. A town that operated on thousands of people, now reduced to less than 70 people, and that's assuming they all survived. The only special thing about this town that would remain would be the Kane family, since their architecture are a source of mysticism themselves. But do you really think they would care to stay in such an ordinary ghost town? For them, it's like there's no point in staying anymore. They won't even stay, and after they leave, they have nothing left. Literally, it just becomes an ordinary ghost town, doomed. No one would want to come here. No one is going, like, it's doomed. Either way, up to this point, Artemy has been through some crap. But after all that, after everything he's been through, all the decisions he made, you know, he makes the choice he thought was correct, but turns out it is the worst possible choice he could have made. Yeah, if I was in his shoes as well, like, I would delude myself as well. He realizes he has caused genocide. So once he drank the blood, his consciousness was altered in a way where he thought this decision turned out like the diurnal ending. A bittersweet ending where a lot of sacrifices were made, but at least there is still hope because the children inherited the magic. When in reality, the children have become ordinary. The magic is gone, and he has forced them to live in a town where there is no hope. He's forced that life onto them. So that's my interpretation of the Diurnal Ending. You know, like the game or the powers that be, you know, if you know, you know, creates a bunch of distraction for us, such as the list, children's politics, the canes, the plague, Clara and her evil twin, all the mistresses. It's all to make this seem more convoluted than it actually is. In reality, it's so much simpler. Without the polyhedron, at this point, I mean, there is nothing. Because the polyhedron is required for the Earth's magic to be alive. And here's another thing, even if the polyhedron takes over eventually, like Mother Earth dies, we never know, like the polyhedron itself might become the source of magic in this town in a new way. Because if you remember, I think it was Georgie who said, like, as long, or Victor, I can't remember, as long as the children keep believing in the tower will stay magical. You know, that's the power of the tower, is the children's belief. Kind of, I think it was like Jack Frost or something like that, yeah. Like, I think the polyhedron has to pierce the Udruk's heart for the children to be able to inherit the Earth's magic. To me, it makes sense in this way, both in a symbolic and logical way. By killing the Udruk, the polyhedron kills the old ways. It steals that magic from the Earth and enables the children to inherit the magic and start the new ways. Yeah, and of course, morally speaking, this could be a bit wrong. You know, you could argue that this cannot be interpreted as something good, but it's better than a genocide. Now, two more facts that correlate with this theory is Inquisitor Aglaia and Artemy himself. In one of the pantomimes, Aglaia says that it is an impossible task she was given while admitting she is afraid of General Alexander Block. She says they have set her up to die. There is no victory with the problem she faces in this town. There is no victory, okay? And assuming my theory, it makes sense from her point of view, because if she destroys the tower, is basically dooming the whole town to a hopeless future, like I said. You know, she'd be causing genocide, turning this town into a ghost town. But if she doesn't destroy the tower, the plague will persist. Even if the plague is a bit different, the plague will persist, which means she failed her task. So there's no winning for her. This is why she wants to run away, because there's no winning here. The other fact is a bit more nuanced, but Artemy is an incredibly unreliable narrator. One moment he is saying he did not kill the 3 people at the train station. The next he is saying, oh no, it was self-defense. Sometimes he believes he's been away for 6 years. And sometimes he's been away for 5 years, you know, like given how unreliable of a narrator he is, I believe this theory perfectly suits Artemy as a character. A lot of the videos I watched, you know, were like retellings, you know, and they really stayed neutral. Like, I couldn't watch all of them, obviously, but a lot of the videos I did watch, you know, I watched like 6 or 7 or something like that, were a lot of retellings. So I wanted to make a video that gives a definitive opinion rather than having a neutral stance. So I might have left something out. I might have missed something that makes this whole theory null. But please do tell me in the comment section. Maybe there's a huge plot hole that I missed in my theory. But for now, I will be preparing a similar video for the Nocturnal Ending. It's probably going to be much more shorter than this video because, yeah, I've never made a video this long and damn. But yeah.